Police ordered the dog to tear into the old veteran, but the K9 did what no one expected. Part 1. The bench that bothered power. Unleash the K9. Let the damn dog drag him off the bench. The words cut through the air like a cold slap across the face of decency. They weren't whispered in anger or frustration. They were barked loud and clear across Franklin War Memorial Plaza in downtown Nashville, Tennessee, on Memorial Day, in front of the cameras, in front of veterans, children, and tourists alike. And the target, a 79-year-old man sitting quietly alone on a granite bench, wearing a worn-out M65 field jacket, his silver hair tousled by the breeze, dog tags clutched in his left hand, his right hand gently resting on a faded photograph of 6 young men. His name was Elliot Wade. And at that moment, he wasn't a hero. He wasn't a Marine. He wasn't even a man, not to Commissioner Andrew Lang. He was, in Lang's words, a disruptive element that needed to be removed before the governor arrives. Now, I want to ask you, what would you have done if you were there? Would you have stepped in? Would you have stayed silent? Comment, I would have stood up if you believe no veteran should ever be dragged off a war memorial bench. And tell me, what do you think the dog did next? This isn't just another video. This is about memory, about dignity, and about what happens when one old soldier refuses to move and the city tries to forget him. But memory has teeth, and sometimes it wags its tail. Earlier that day, the plaza was already buzzing. Local news vans, white tents, sound tests, and folding chairs were being lined up. The mayor's aide barked orders into a headset. Children in ROTC uniforms practiced salutes under the watchful eyes of their instructors. A brass band rehearsed taps softly in the distance. But one man sat motionless, alone. Elliot Wade had been coming here every Memorial Day for 41 years. Same bench, same time, same silence. His eyes never wandered far from the section of the wall where 6 names were etched in stone, brothers in arms who never made it back from Kaesang. He didn't wave signs, he didn't wear medals, he just sat. This year, though, someone filed a complaint. There's an old homeless guy sitting in the camera frame. A junior staffer muttered. A superior overheard. The message went up the chain until it reached Lang. Commissioner Andrew Lang wasn't known for his compassion. Tall, polished, with a silver badge that gleamed like his ambition, Lang viewed the plaza not as a sacred space, but a stage. He was up for a congressional endorsement, and no visual clutter was going to ruin his optics. He arrived at the scene trailed by 2 officers and a female K9 handler. Seeing Elliot, he didn't hesitate. "What's this?" he scoffed. "He doesn't move." "He's here every year, sir," one officer offered gently. "Vietnam veteran, I believe. I don't care if he's Eisenhower. He's not in uniform, he's not on the list, and he's not in my shot. Remove him." Officer Sarah Mendel, in her early 30s, a rising star in the K9 unit, held the leash of a large German shepherd named Ranger. The dog was alert but calm, eyes scanning. Elliot remained silent. Sir Mendel said, hesitant, "Maybe we can talk to him first." "No time. You see that news van? He's in the background. Unleash the K9. Let the damn dog drag him off the bench." There was a moment, a terrible electric moment, when no one moved, as if the city itself had paused. Then Elliot turned slowly, looked up at Lang and spoke 5 words. "I come here to remember," Lang sneered. "You can remember from anywhere else." Elliot nodded once, stood with effort, and placed the photo back into his breast pocket. He didn't beg, didn't argue, just turned slightly to sit back down. Lang's face darkened. "That's it. Officer Mendel now." Mendel hesitated. "Sir, this is wrong." Lang's voice dropped to a chilling whisper. "You want to keep your badge?" Silently, Mendel knelt. Her fingers unclipped the leash. Ranger tensed. The dog's muscles coiled. The leash dropped. Tourists gasped. One woman stepped in front of her child. Phones came out. Elliot didn't flinch. His left hand brushed the worn patch on his jacket. 1st Marine Division. His right held the dog tags tight enough to draw blood from his palm. Ranger charged, but halfway there the dog slowed, ears twitched, nose flared, and then it stopped. Every breath in the plaza was held, and in that hush Ranger walked, not lunged, walked, step by step up to Elliot. Then he sat, gently, laid his head on the old man's lap. The silence broke like glass. A child whispered, "Mommy, the dog is hugging him." Lang's face contorted, red blooming across his cheeks. "Get that mutt back." But Ranger wouldn't move. Elliot looked down, eyes glistening. "Ranger," he said softly. "Good boy." Mendel was shaking. "Sir, I think the dog knows him." Lang snapped, "That's impossible." But it wasn't. 10 years ago, Ranger had been part of a retired military canine rehabilitation program. Guess who trained that unit long before Ranger ever wore a badge? Elliot Wade. The cameras kept rolling. Flashbulbs popped, and someone in the crowd whispered it first. "Don't you dare touch that man." The wave was coming, but Lang didn't see it. He only saw the dog. The crowd saw a symbol. And the veteran, he saw a memory, a loyalty that outlived orders, a brotherhood not broken by time. And Ranger, he saw his commander, "Stay with us," because what happened next would change the city forever. And Ranger wasn't the only one who remembered. Part 2. The dog remembered. The dog didn't attack. It bowed its head and stayed. Nobody moved, not the officers, not the tourists, not even Commissioner Lang, who just moments ago had barked an order cruel enough to chill bone. But now his voice caught in his throat as the one thing he never anticipated unfolded before his eyes. The city's most highly trained K9 unit, released to remove an unwanted old man, had disobeyed in the most astonishing way. Ranger muscles, taut, eyes sharp, was now resting his head gently on Elliot Wade's lap, like a child returning to someone he thought he'd never see again. The image looked almost scripted, yet it was real, raw, and full of a kind of sacred silence that even Lang couldn't break. And here's the question I want you to answer in the comments. If even a trained police dog remembers who a hero is, why does the system keep forgetting? Right? He remembered, if you believe what Ranger did, was more honorable than the humans standing around. The plaza that was once filled with camera flashes and news crews now felt like a church. Phones rose into the air slowly, reverently. Officer Sarah Mendel stood frozen, her eyes flicking between Lang and the scene in front of her, heart pounding like war drums. She had unclipped the leash. She had followed orders. But nothing in her training had prepared her for this. "Sir, he's not... I think he knows him," she stammered. Lang scoffed, but there was a shake in his voice now. "That's ridiculous. It's a fluke, a scent, something he was trained to react to, nothing more." Elliot didn't look up. His hand slowly moved across Ranger's ears, trembling not from fear, but from something deeper. Memory, recognition. His voice came out rough but strong. "Ranger, sit rep." And to everyone's astonishment, the dog adjusted its posture into a near-perfect sit, not because he was told to, but because he had once followed that voice in places no civilian would ever understand. In the jungles of Ketsan, where Elliot had helped train dozens of handlers and their dogs in survival navigation and rescue during a classified Marine K9 cooperation project, most of which was never even listed in official records. Ranger had been one of them, a rookie, young, unbreakable, until the day a collapsed tunnel almost took him. Until Elliot pulled him out with bloodied hands, whispering the same words he spoke today. "You're not done yet." Officer Mendel knelt beside Ranger now. Disbelief stretched across her face. "I've never seen him react like this. Never. He's trained for neutralization, not affection. Elliot smiled weakly, one hand still resting gently on the dog's head. Affection isn't taught, it's earned. Whispers surged through the crowd. An elderly couple stood a little closer. One man removed his Vietnam cap, pressing it to his chest. Two teenagers who had been watching from the edge of the square dropped their basketball and moved forward, their usual bravado replaced with awe. Judy Keller, a former war correspondent and now freelance photojournalist, was there too. She had nearly packed up her equipment, frustrated by the spectacle the city was making of its own memorial. But now her camera was raised again. Her hands were trembling, but steady enough to capture what would become the most circulated image of the decade, a veteran forgotten by the system, remembered by the one creature no one expected. Click. The shutter froze the moment in time. Click. Another shot as Elliot leaned in, eyes wet but unbroken. Click. The dog didn't move. Lang exploded. That's enough, Mendel restrained that dog. But she didn't move, not out of rebellion, out of reverence. I think you should back off, sir, someone muttered nearby. Lang turned, a young man in his 20s, ROTC cadet, standing at attention. Who said that? Lang demanded. I did, said the cadet louder now. Sir, with respect, that man has more medals than you have buttons on your uniform. The crowd stirred like embers catching wind. Somebody clapped once, then another, and soon a reluctant applause rippled through the square. Not for defiance, for the truth. Lang's eyes darted to the media. Too many cameras, too many witnesses. The narrative was slipping, and then came the final crack. Judy Keller stepped forward, her press badge around her neck, voice calm but fierce. Commissioner Lang, I think the public deserves to know why you unleashed a police canine on a decorated Marine on Memorial Day. Lang's face paled. This man isn't a loiterer, she continued. He's Elliot Wade, Silver Star recipient, served in Khe Sanh, survived a unit wipeout and continued rescuing wounded under fire. He's the reason half of Tennessee's veteran registry even exists. And you were about to have him dragged off a bench by a dog that used to call him Commander. The crowd gasped. Lang looked to his officers, but none moved. Sarah Mendel stepped in front of Elliot. Sir, we're not doing this. Lang turned on his heel and stormed off without a word. And right then, as if by cue, a strong gust of wind swept across the plaza. The flags flapped, the sky glowed copper, and Ranger, still sitting, lifted his head, let out a long, quiet breath, then laid it gently again on Elliot's thigh. Judy whispered, My father knew him. He told me there were two kinds of Marines, the ones who followed orders, and the ones you'd follow into fire. The footage went live that evening. The clip hit 1.2 million views in 12 hours. Ranger's quiet defiance, Elliot's unwavering calm, Lang's exposed humiliation. And in the comments a phrase began appearing again and again, he remembered. If you're still watching, thank you for staying through this moment. These stories matter. Veterans like Elliot matter. If you want more stories like his real ones that don't make the news but should make sure to subscribe, you won't want to miss what happens next. Because this story, it's only just begun, and something bigger was about to be unleashed. Not a dog, but a movement. Part 3. The soldier they tried to erase. They said I was a problem, but I was just remembering my brothers. That sentence wasn't shouted. It wasn't even spoken to anyone in particular. Elliot Wade said it while sitting on the same stone bench where just the day before a canine had chosen loyalty over orders. But when his quiet words were picked up by a passing microphone, they echoed through living rooms across America. And suddenly, a man the city tried to forget became the voice of every veteran who had ever been discarded, dismissed, or quietly pushed aside. If you're watching this and you've ever felt like the world stopped seeing you the moment you stopped wearing the uniform, comment, "I remember," below. Because the truth is, heroes don't fade, they're erased. And this time, someone got caught with the eraser still in their hand. After the video went viral, the narrative flipped like a switch. Within 24 hours, Elliot's photo dog at his feet, dog tag in hand, was on the front page of nearly every major news outlet. The nation now wanted to know who was this man, and why had no one heard his name before. Judy Keller, the journalist who broke the story, didn't stop at one clip. She dug through dusty files at the local VA, through records sealed by bureaucratic indifference. What she found stunned even the most hardened newsroom veterans. Elliot Wade wasn't just a Marine. He was the last surviving squad leader of Echo Company 1st Marine Division during the siege of Khe Sanh in 1968. After his unit was surrounded, he led a breakout that saved 12 wounded men. He was shot twice, kept going, pulled 2 canine handlers and their dogs out of a collapsed bunker while under mortar fire. For his actions, he was awarded the Silver Star, though the ceremony was never public. The citation was buried marked classified, as the operation itself had been blacked out during a political scandal. And when he came home, no parade, no banner, just silence, and then paperwork, and eventually nothing. Judy released everything: names, scans, a letter from Elliot's commanding officer stating, "If he hadn't stayed behind, I wouldn't be alive to write this." It should have ended there, an overdue recognition, a national apology. But Commissioner Andrew Lang, humiliated and under fire, made a fatal mistake. He doubled down. In a live press conference flanked by advisors and a row of stone-faced officers, Lang looked directly into the camera and said, "I will not apologize for enforcing the law." Mr. Wade's military service, while commendable, does not grant him immunity from civic order. We are a city of rules. The backlash was immediate. Veterans groups erupted in outrage. Social media boiled. Protesters, young, old, civilian, military, began to gather at the plaza, not just to honor Elliot, but to demand Lang's resignation. Former Marines drove in from 3 states. One group of retired canine handlers brought their dogs, lined them up in silence before the bench, each canine sitting calmly beside its handler. It was the kind of quiet rebellion that doesn't need slogans, just presence. Back at the plaza, Elliot was reluctant to speak. He hadn't come to make a statement. He only wanted to sit with the memories that refused to leave him, but Judy convinced him. In a small recorded interview, Elliot sat beneath the bronze eagle of the memorial and finally told his story. "I never wanted medals," he said. "I wanted my brothers back. I trained dogs because they didn't lie. They didn't forget. They didn't ask me if I was loitering. They just stayed." He paused, glancing down at Ranger, who lay faithfully at his feet. "When they died," he continued, voice breaking, "I made them a promise that as long as I could walk, I'd sit here every year. That's all this was. That's all it's ever been." He looked straight into the lens. "So if remembering the fallen makes me a problem, then we got a bigger problem than I thought." The video reached 10 million views in 36 hours. Across the city, murals of Elliot and Ranger began to appear. Veterans painted them. School children added handprints. A movement had started. One rooted in a single truth: respect is not a privilege, it is a debt. Meanwhile, Lang's world unraveled. City council members began calling for emergency hearings. The mayor distanced herself publicly. Then the final blow: an internal leak revealed that Lang had previously ordered citations against multiple homeless veterans near public buildings, describing them in internal memos as optical hazards. The public turned. His own party withdrew support. By the weekend, Commissioner Andrew Lang was suspended pending investigation. But Elliot, he remained quiet. He didn't gloat. When reporters asked for comment, he simply said, I'm glad people are talking. Just don't forget the names on that wall. They're the reason I'm still breathing. If you're still watching, and if this story has made you think of someone you know, someone who served, someone who was forgotten, please share this video with their name in the comments. Let this moment become more than a headline. Let it become a promise kept. Because what happened next, no one saw it coming. The governor called, and the president was watching. The story of Elliot Wade was far from over, and so was the reckoning. Part 4. Loyalty is louder than orders. That old man didn't move, but he moved an entire nation. The call came just before sunrise. The governor's office, direct, not filtered through an assistant, not framed with PR lingo, just a simple message from the highest seat in the state. We've seen the footage, we've read the reports. Tell Elliot Wade he has our respect. But Elliot wasn't there to hear it. At that moment, he was exactly where he always was, sitting quietly on his bench at Franklin War Memorial Plaza, dog tag still warm in his palm, and Ranger pressed tightly at his side. The city had changed, but he hadn't. And maybe that's what made it all so powerful. Because while the cameras rolled and headlines screamed Elliot, Wade didn't ask for anything. No apology, no compensation, no speech. He just sat, like he always had. And yet somehow by refusing to move, he moved something much greater than himself. If this moment moves you, do comment "I stand with him" below. Because when the world forgets what loyalty looks like, stories like this remind us loudly, quietly, permanently. What began as a single act of defiance, Ranger refusing to obey, had become a ripple across the country. In Boston, a group of retired SEALs held a candlelight vigil for forgotten veterans. In Texas, a fourth-grade class created posters saying, "We remember Elliot's bench." In Washington, D.C., veterans began requesting their military dogs be buried with full honors alongside them. But the most powerful transformation happened in Nashville. Commissioner Lang was gone, forced into resignation, not just for his cruelty, but for the paper trail uncovered after the press dug deeper. The optical hazard memos, the denied VA housing petitions, the emails about cleansing public image before election season, all of it exposed, and in his place, Officer Sarah Mendel, the same young canine handler who had once unclipped Ranger's leash under pressure, now promoted to interim head of community police liaison. Her first act, she walked into the same plaza where it all began, knelt before Elliot, placed her badge on the bench, and said, "If I had said no that day, none of this would have happened. I can't take it back, but I can serve differently now." Elliot simply nodded. "Then you already have." Behind them a crowd had gathered again. Not protesters this time, but neighbors, students, veterans, families with kids, each one holding a small flag or photograph. At 11 a.m. sharp, a bell rang, the kind used at old fire stations, and one by one 6 names were read aloud, the names etched on the wall behind Elliot's bench. The same 6 men he had sworn to remember. Each name echoed, and after each one Ranger barked once. It was not rehearsed, but it was perfect. Then came the moment no one expected. A rustling in the crowd. A man in dress blues emerged, walking slowly, flanked by 2 Secret Service agents. It was not a local official. It was General Malcolm Briggs, a 4-star Marine commander and former field officer in Khe Sanh. He stepped forward, saluted Elliot with full ceremonial precision, then extended his hand. "Sergeant Wade," he said, "I served 2 hills over from you in '68. You saved lives we never had a chance to thank you for. The president asked me to deliver this." He handed Elliot a folded American flag, bordered in gold, with a silver Marine emblem stitched at its center. Tucked inside the fold was a letter handwritten. "I won't read it out loud," Elliot said, voice shaking, "but it's from a man I didn't think remembered me." The crowd was silent, some crying, some filming, most simply standing in a stunned, respectful awe. At that moment, a group of children approached, led by a teacher holding a handmade sign. "We made you a new bench, Mr. Elliot." What followed was unexpected even for Judy Keller, who had covered war zones and protests her whole life. The city had quietly approved the installation of a permanent bench next to the memorial, carved from Tennessee oak, sealed in honor, and engraved with the words, "A soldier never forgets. Neither does his dog." As Elliot ran his hand along the new bench's edge, Ranger stood. Then did something no one taught him to do. He climbed onto the bench, sat tall, and howled once. A long aching sound that felt like it belonged to every dog who had waited at a door that never opened again. Elliot placed his hand on the dog's back. His voice was barely a whisper. "That's for them, not me." Meanwhile, inside City Hall, a different scene unfolded. Lang, now out of uniform and under review, sat watching the broadcast on a public screen. A young custodian walked past him, paused, and said, "You see, that's what leadership looks like." Lang said nothing. What he saw was the consequence of forgetting empathy, of mistaking silence for weakness, of believing that loyalty could be ordered instead of earned. If you've ever been underestimated, erased, or told your time had passed, Elliot's story is your story too. Share this video with someone who needs to be remembered, someone who taught you what it means to stay when the world walks away. Because sometimes staying is the loudest act of all. And as the sun dipped low over the plaza and Ranger curled back into Elliot's side, the city realized something it should have known all along. This wasn't just a man and a dog. This was a promise kept. Part 5. A bench, a bond, a legacy. He didn't want an apology, he just wanted his bench back. That's what Officer Sarah Mendel said later when reporters asked what Elliot Wade had demanded after everything that happened. She looked at them, tears in her eyes, voice steady, and said, "He didn't ask for recognition. He didn't even want his name on the plaque. He just wanted his bench back." And in that simple request, the nation saw a mirror of dignity, of memory, and of a generation that never asked for thanks but deeply deserved it. So let me ask you, if someone in your family wore the uniform, sat in silence, and was quietly forgotten, what would you do if the world tried to erase them? Comment "not forgotten" below. If you believe no veteran should ever have to prove they still belong. It had been 1 week since the day Ranger knelt beside Elliot and refused to follow orders. 1 week since a city tried to silence an old man and instead was transformed by the quiet loyalty of a dog. Now, Franklin War Memorial Plaza was no longer a political backdrop. It had become a sacred space, reborn not through ceremony, but through stillness, through truth, through the quiet power of one man who simply refused to move. On the morning of the new bench's unveiling, hundreds came. Veterans from Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan, children carrying flags, journalists from as far as London. And in the center of it all, Elliot Wade sat in his field jacket, same as always, his silver hair catching the breeze, his expression unreadable. Then from the edge of the crowd, someone approached. A woman, mid-50s, polished, nervous. Her name was Caroline Lang, the daughter of former Commissioner Andrew Lang. She walked slowly toward Elliot, stopping just shy of his bench. Ranger stood protectively, but Elliot raised a hand. "It's all right," he said. Caroline removed her sunglasses. Her eyes were red. "I didn't come to defend him," she said quietly. "I came because he's not the only one who forgot what matters." She held out a sealed envelope. "It's from him. From my father. He couldn't come today. He didn't have the courage. But he wanted you to have this." Elliot took it without a word. He didn't open it. He didn't need to. He looked at Caroline not with anger, but with the quiet understanding of someone who's lived through too much to waste energy on blame. Some things he said can't be undone, but they can be remembered. She nodded, tears welling again. He watches the footage every night. He doesn't say much, just that he got it all wrong. Elliot glanced at the new bench beside him, freshly carved, yet already part of the earth. That's all right, he said softly. This bench wasn't built to blame. It was built to hold people who are ready to sit and listen. Behind them, a group of children read aloud the inscription on the back of the bench. This seat is for those who stood, for those who stayed, for those who were left behind but never left each other. Later that day, something else happened. Quiet, unplanned. Ranger began refusing to go home with anyone but Elliot. No one else could lead him. In the end, the city relented. Ranger was officially retired with full honors and allowed to stay with Elliot, who now lived in a small studio near the plaza, paid for entirely by strangers who simply wrote with their donations for the man on the bench. That night, just after sunset, a small gathering formed. No speeches, no microphones, just a circle of people, some in uniform, some in jeans, standing around Elliot and Ranger as the stars came out. One by one, they spoke names, not their own, but names of those they'd lost, names they hadn't said aloud in years. When it was Elliot's turn, he looked to the sky, voice trembling. Frank, Morrison, Dale, Tuck, Reeds, and Will Bailey. His voice broke. I told them I'd keep their memory alive. I didn't expect the whole country to hear it. And then almost a whisper, but maybe that's what they were waiting for. He looked down at Ranger, who nudged his hand tail, wagging gently in the dark. I guess you were too, huh? And that's how it ends. Not with a flag-draped parade, not with policy or politics, but with a man and his dog, and a promise that never died. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to believe in loyalty again, someone who thinks their voice doesn't matter, because it does. And remember, sometimes the loudest act of courage is just staying still. So now I'll ask you again, who are you remembering today? And when was the last time someone remembered you? Leave their name in the comments below. Because as Elliot Wade showed us, the bench may be quiet, but it never forgets.